The South China Sea was a graveyard of ships in the early 1800s. Merchant vessels vanished without a trace. Imperial navies, British, Portuguese, Chinese, sailed in, confident in their cannons, only to return battered, if they returned at all. Rumors spread of a phantom armada, a force so vast it could darken the horizon, commanded not by a fearsome warlord, but by a woman. Her name was Ching Shih, and she began life far from power, an ordinary woman in a floating brothel. Yet within a decade, she rose to command the largest pirate fleet the world has ever seen, over 1,800 ships and 70,000 ruthless outlaws. She conquered trade routes, humbled empires, and wrote her own code of laws that terrified even her most brutal men. But how did a woman, in an age where she was expected to obey, come to rule one of the most feared naval forces in history? And what shocking twist ended her reign? Not with her capture, but with something far more unbelievable. This is the untold story of Ching Shih, the pirate queen who ruled the seas. History remembers pirates as reckless rogues, Jack Sparrow-like misfits or bloodthirsty marauders who lived fast and died young. But Ching Shih was different. She wasn't a mere outlaw. She was a strategist, a businesswoman, and a master manipulator of fear. Born into poverty in southern China, she learned early that survival meant playing a dangerous game. At first, she lived on the fringes of society, trapped in the floating brothels of Canton. But fate intervened when she caught the eye of a rising pirate leader, Zhang Yi, captain of the infamous Red Flag Fleet. Their partnership was unlike anything the seas had ever seen. Together, they united warring pirate clans into a single unstoppable navy. When Zhang Yi died unexpectedly, most assumed the fleet would splinter. But Ching Shih had other plans. She seized command, enforced a ruthless code of laws, and grew her empire to rival the Qing Dynasty itself. Her pirates became an organized military machine, loyal to her alone. Over the next hour, we'll journey through her meteoric rise, her battles with empires, and her shocking fate after leaving the pirate life behind. Prepare for betrayal, cunning deals, and storms of cannon fire, because Ching Shih's story is unlike any other. The South China Sea in the early 19th century was a crossroads of empires. British, Portuguese, and Dutch traders sailed its waters, transporting silk, spices, tea, and porcelain. Chinese merchant junks moved goods between Canton and Southeast Asia. But these riches came with risk. Pirates lurked everywhere, preying on ships like wolves hunting a caravan. Yet none had the cunning or ambition of the woman about to dominate these waters. Ching Shih was not born into wealth or nobility. Historians believe she entered the world around 1775 in Guangdong Province, China, a place where poverty pushed many into desperate trades. Some women became servants. Others, like Ching Shih, found themselves in the floating brothels anchored off Canton. These were not glamorous pleasure boats. They were traps for the destitute, places where women were commodities in a world that viewed them as expendable. But Ching Shih possessed something rare: sharp intelligence and unshakable ambition. Unlike others who resigned themselves to fate, she learned how to read the moods of men, negotiate favors, and observe the flow of power between pirates, merchants, and corrupt officials. Even in captivity, she was studying how to escape it. Enter Zhang Yi, a seasoned pirate commander of the infamous Red Flag Fleet, a coalition of raiding ships that terrorized China's southern coast. Around 1801, Zhang Yi visited Canton to celebrate a successful campaign. It was here that he first encountered Ching Shih. Accounts vary. Some say he was captivated by her beauty. Others insist it was her confidence and sharp tongue that drew him in. Unlike other pirate leaders, Zhang Yi didn't just want a mistress. He wanted a partner. He proposed a deal: marry him and share in his growing empire of ships and plunder. But Ching Shih wasn't a woman to be bought with promises. She set her own terms, an equal share of power in his fleet's affairs. Whether through bold negotiation or sheer force of personality, she secured what no other pirate's wife had: real influence over strategy, loot, and leadership. Once married, Ching Shih proved invaluable. Zhang Yi was a capable fighter and tactician, but Ching Shih understood organization. She helped draft agreements between rival pirate groups, persuading them to unite under the red flag banner. Instead of endless infighting, the fleets began to coordinate attacks, share plunder, and protect each other from government patrols. Under this alliance, their numbers swelled. Soon they commanded hundreds of ships and thousands of pirates. But Ching Shih wasn't just consolidating power. She was observing everything. Pirate culture had rules, crude, bloody, but rules nonetheless. She saw weaknesses in discipline, greed-driven betrayals, and the reckless bravado that left fleets vulnerable to organized naval forces. In these flaws, she found her future advantage. In 1807, Zhang Yi's life ended abruptly. Some accounts say a storm swept him overboard. Others whisper of betrayal, sabotage, or assassination. No one truly knows. What is certain is that his death left a massive power vacuum. Rival captains eyed his fleet like hungry sharks. The Red Flag Alliance was in danger of splintering. But Ching Shih acted first. Drawing on alliances she had quietly built, she declared her right to lead, not as Zhang Yi's widow, but as a commander in her own right. She called upon Cheng Po-tsai, Zhang Yi's adopted son and trusted lieutenant, to support her claim. With his loyalty and the backing of key pirate factions, Ching Shih secured control. It was unprecedented, a woman at the helm of the largest pirate fleet in history. But it was only the beginning. Ching Shih didn't just inherit a pirate fleet, she inherited a problem. A massive force of over 300 ships and nearly 70,000 men sounds impressive, but it also meant chaos, divided loyalties, and captains hungry for power. Any sign of weakness and the fleet would splinter. And in the lawless waters of the South China Sea, a divided fleet was a dead fleet. But Ching Shih wasn't weak. She was about to prove she was the most dangerous pirate of them all. Not by brute force, but by discipline and genius-level strategy. Ching Shih knew she couldn't rule through fear alone. Fear creates rebellion. She needed order. So, she did something unheard of in pirate lore. She created a strict legal system, a pirate code that every member of her fleet was bound to follow. And this code was brutal. Desertion, death. Stealing from the fleet's common treasury, death. Rape, death, sometimes slow and public as a warning to others. Disobeying a direct order, death. But here's what made her code legendary. It wasn't just about punishment. It was about fairness. Loot had to be recorded, divided, and distributed according to strict rules. Captains received their share, but common sailors also got enough to ensure loyalty. Women captured in raids could not be harmed or sold without consent. Many were allowed to join the fleet, either as wives, traders, or even fighters. Ching Shih wasn't building a band of criminals. She was building a floating society with its own laws, economy, and hierarchy, one that ran smoother than the Qing government itself. The Red Flag Fleet became a force so disciplined it resembled a naval empire rather than a gang of pirates. Ching Shih organized her fleet into divisions, each led by trusted captains who reported directly to her. These divisions coordinated attacks, blockades, and supply runs with military precision. To ensure loyalty, she demanded total obedience but also rewarded success. Captains who brought in rich hauls or defeated rival pirates were praised and given bigger shares. Those who disobeyed found their heads rolling over the side of a ship. Her ability to command respect and fear in equal measure transformed the Red Flag Fleet into an unstoppable force. Under her leadership, they controlled the Pearl River Delta, effectively strangling southern China's trade routes and collecting protection taxes from coastal villages. Many merchants simply paid tribute rather than risk losing everything. The Qing government couldn't ignore this pirate empire. In 1808, they sent their navy, hundreds of ships, to crush Ching Shih's fleet once and for all. But they underestimated her. Ching Shih used a tactic no one saw coming, the feigned retreat. She lured Qing ships into narrow waterways, then ambushed them from hidden flanks, burning or capturing entire squadrons. Reports claimed that Qing sailors often threw themselves overboard rather than face her wrath. By the end of the campaign, the government navy was humiliated. So much so that many captured Qing ships were absorbed into the Red Flag Fleet, making Ching Shih stronger than ever. It wasn't just the government she had to worry about. Rival pirate lords, Many former allies of Zheng Yi believed Qing Shi's control wouldn't last. But one by one, they either joined her or were destroyed. Her most important ally became Cheng Putzai, Zheng Yi's adopted son and a skilled young commander. Some accounts say Qing Shi eventually married him, consolidating their power and silencing any who questioned her authority. By 1810, Qing Shi wasn't just a pirate queen. She was a sovereign ruler of the sea. Her fleet was so powerful that foreign powers like the British and Portuguese began avoiding her waters, choosing longer trade routes rather than risking confrontation. But this rise of power came with a question: how long could it last? Pirates could defeat navies, terrify merchants, and grow rich, but empires built on chaos eventually crumble. And the South China Sea was about to become a battleground for Qing Shi's ultimate test, surviving not just war, but politics. By the early 1810s, Qing Shi's dominance over the South China Sea was complete. Her fleet of hundreds of ships, known as the Red Flag Fleet, was feared by imperial authorities, foreign navies, and rival pirate groups alike. But with immense power came immense threats, and the Chinese government was determined to crush her empire once and for all. The Qing dynasty had suffered repeated humiliations at the hands of Qing Shi. Merchant convoys had been plundered, coastal garrisons overwhelmed, and tax revenues drained. Worse, whispers spread through the empire. Tales of a pirate queen who commanded more loyalty than the emperor himself. The dynasty responded with a bold plan: unite with foreign powers, including the Portuguese and British navies. Deploy hundreds of war junks and armed vessels. Corner Qing Shi and destroy her once and for all. But Qing Shi was no ordinary pirate. She anticipated the coming storm, strengthened alliances with local fishing villages, and expanded her spy network. Every movement of the Qing fleet reached her ears before the first sails caught the wind. One of the most dramatic confrontations came at the Baka Tigris, a strategic choke point near the mouth of the Pearl River. The Chinese Imperial Navy, reinforced by Portuguese ships, attempted to trap the Red Flag Fleet within the narrow waters. Cannon fire thundered across the waves, and smoke choked the horizon. But Qing Shi's fleet moved like a single organism, diving, feinting, and striking with precision. A smaller pirate junks darted in and out of formation, drawing enemy fire. A larger warships, under Cheng Putzai's command, crashed into imperial vessels with deadly ramming maneuvers. Boarding parties, fearless and disciplined, swarmed decks like rising tides, cutting down soldiers before they could reload their muskets. By nightfall, the waters of Baka Tigris were littered with burning hulls. Despite their superior firepower, the Qing and Portuguese forces suffered heavy losses, while Qing Shi escaped with most of her fleet intact, and her legend even stronger. Yet victory carried a cost. Each major battle drained resources: gunpowder, weapons, provisions, and even the most loyal captains began whispering of dwindling supplies. Worse, the Qing dynasty began offering amnesty to pirates who surrendered, granting full pardons in exchange for loyalty to the empire. Some lesser pirate groups accepted, peeling away from Qing Shi's command. Others were captured and executed, their heads displayed along the coast as warnings. But Qing Shi remained unbroken. She responded with brutal efficiency, tightening her pirate code, punishing deserters, and consolidating her power around the most loyal factions of her fleet. The Qing dynasty, frustrated by repeated failures, launched one final offensive, assembling its largest naval force yet. Backed by Portuguese artillery and Western military advisors, the Armada sailed with one goal: destroy the Red Flag Fleet once and for all. Qing Shi met them head-on. The battle raged for days, with storms tearing through the sea and cannon fire lighting up the night sky. But Qing Shi, calculating as ever, refused to let pride dictate her moves. She fought strategically, crippling enemy ships, then retreating before reinforcements could surround her. This wasn't defeat, it was preparation. Realizing the war could not be won forever, Qing Shi did the unthinkable. She opened negotiations with the Qing dynasty. But she did so on her terms. Instead of begging for mercy, she demanded full amnesty for herself and her pirates, the right to keep her wealth, official recognition for Cheng Putzai as a naval commander in the Qing military, The Qing court, desperate to end the costly campaign, agreed. And with that, the most feared pirate queen in history walked away, not in chains, but in triumph. By 1810, the South China Sea was no longer the chaotic hunting ground it had been. The Red Flag Fleet had cemented dominance, but cracks were forming. Constant battles, heavy casualties, and increasing pressure from imperial forces began to take their toll. Ching Shih, ever the strategist, understood one thing clearly: endless war could only lead to the fleet's slow death. Yet, in a move that shocked the Qing dynasty and the world of piracy, Ching Shih did not fall in battle. She did not go down in a blaze of glory. Instead, she did something no pirate of her scale had ever achieved. She negotiated her retirement. The Qing government had tried everything: naval assaults, economic sanctions, even bounties on the pirates' heads. But the fleet remained unstoppable. Defeating Ching Shih outright had proven impossible. So, the empire resorted to diplomacy. Officials offered a pardon to pirates who surrendered, but there was a catch. They had to give up their ships, weapons, and loot. It was a deal most pirates would laugh at. But Ching Shih was no ordinary pirate. She saw beyond treasure. She saw survival and legacy. When the Qing court requested her surrender, Ching Shih did not bow or plead. She walked into the governor-general's office like a victor, not a criminal. Her demands were outrageous: full amnesty for herself and her pirates, permission to keep her fortune, the right for her crew to retire or join the Imperial Navy with honors. The officials balked at first, but what choice did they have? Without Ching Shih's cooperation, the South China Sea would remain a war zone. And so, against all odds, the empire agreed. In April 1810, Ching Shih formally surrendered with 17,318 pirates, 226 ships, and thousands of weapons. Not one pirate faced execution. Many even became respected members of the imperial forces they once terrorized. Ching Shih retired wealthy, powerful, and untouchable. A queen who had beaten an empire not through brute force, but through wit. Most pirates die violently. Their names vanish from history, remembered only in ballads and whispers. But Ching Shih lived out her days as a prosperous businesswoman, opening a gambling house and brothel in Guangzhou. She died in 1844, at the age of 69, a legend, undefeated. Her story isn't just one of piracy. It's one of ambition, leadership, and the courage to seize control of destiny. She didn't just survive the impossible. She mastered it. History remembers conquerors, kings, and empires, but few figures defy the odds and rewrite the rules of power the way Ching Shih did. She began as a woman with no title, no wealth, and no status, sold into a life where the future seemed already written. Yet she seized control of her fate and, in doing so, commanded the largest pirate fleet the world had ever seen, more powerful than many nations' navies combined. What makes her story even more astonishing is how it ended. Not with a heroic death in battle, nor with capture and execution, but with Ching Shih walking away, undefeated. While other pirates met the gallows, she negotiated her freedom, secured her wealth, and lived the rest of her life in peace. In an era where most pirate legends ended in blood, Ching Shih ended hers with a smile and an empire of gold. Her life challenges what we think we know about power, leadership, and survival. She was ruthless yet calculated, feared yet respected, and, most importantly, she understood when to fight and when to bargain. So, what does her legacy teach us? That the greatest victories aren't always won by the sword. They're won by strategy, vision, and daring to break every rule written against you. If this story amazed you as much as it amazed us to tell, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who loves untold history, and subscribe for more legendary tales from the past. And remember, sometimes the most powerful people in history aren't kings or queens of kingdoms, but pirate queens of the open sea.